Okay, let me introduce today's speaker, Catherine Cleland, President of Cleland Marketing, who's going to cover B2B digital paid marketing. Catherine is a marketing strategist, consultant, trainer, executive coach, and entrepreneur. She has 35 years of marketing and product development experience at some of America's best-known Fortune 500 companies, including Hewlett-Packard, the Clorox Company, Bank of America, and Procter & Gamble. Since 2003, she has redirected her vision to the more dynamic needs of entrepreneurs and small businesses, working with hundreds of early-stage startups, research commercialization, and growing businesses on market sizing, marketing strategy, go-to-market plans, and digital marketing. Catherine has a BA in chemistry from Princeton University and an MBA in marketing and finance from Northwestern University's Kellogg Graduate School of Management. Without further ado, Catherine.
I have a spot to stand on. I'm not used to having a spot to stand on. We'll see how this goes. So I've got way more to cover than I can possibly cover in the time that we have. And so I'm going to be gauging based on your level of interest where to skip over and where to start. But let's go. Okay, there we go. So I've got 10 steps to digital ad success, and we're going to go through all of these 10 steps. But the rule is you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. We're going to start with knowing your customer and making sure you interview your customers. This is the step that too many startups skip. If you don't do this well, everything else is wasted effort. So we're going to ground ourselves back in understanding our customer, who is our customer, and then we're going to talk about how that drives your digital ad strategy. Once you know who your customer is and how you're going to move them down this path to a committed advocate, from aware to try to buy to repeat purchase. Aware to try to buy to repeat purchase. So when you're digital marketing, you need to know where you are in this path to being a committed advocate. We're going to go into how to use specifically Google Ads. So somebody asked if I was going to talk about social media marketing and advertising. Not today. I could come back in the spring if you want to do that. Just ask the folks here if you want. That's a whole separate presentation that needs its own hour of time to be able to do. So this is what we're going to go through. I always start with what is marketing, because it's fundamental to how I think you as a small business should approach thinking about all of your marketing activities and your advertising. Because marketing is about matching what you have to offer with the problem the customer is trying to solve. So I'm going to frame everything in that context. The customer has a problem they're trying to solve. You have, with whatever you've done, created a solution for the problem they're trying to solve. So you're trying to find that match. So you have to be able to speak to a customer in a way that touches their motivations and interests. The only way you can do that is if you understand functionally what they need and emotionally how they respond. So you have to get a better profile of that customer and how they buy. You have to be able to deliver that message and the products to the right person, the right place, at the right price. We're not going into that today, but that's a big piece of it, with appropriate and aligned incentives throughout the whole distribution system, whether it's a direct download off the web or whether it's a 3-chain dealer, distributor, retail system. You have to be able to align those incentives. All of that is marketing, but bottom line, it's all about what in digital marketing we call the conversion, the actual transaction where money exchange hands. So knowing your customer, I highly recommend that you create a customer profile and you pin it to your wall. Whether you're in a cubicle, a shared space, at home, wherever it is, make a customer profile. And you need to identify, based on your industry, your target market, what's most important, but you need to know their industry, their geography, their business size, their annual capital budget, as well as expense budgets. Where do they shop? Who influences them? Where do they go for continuing education? Professional development for technical products is a really important piece of understanding, and what periodicals they read. You really want to develop, as a business-to-business marketer, a tangible profile that you keep in mind all the time as you address any of the steps you've got in your marketing. Then you need to know what you're going to have to say to entice them to try your solution. So you have to be credible, you have to be about the benefit, and you have to be thought-provoking. Most business-to-business and industrial buyers, if you touch on these 3 points, are going to have some level of interest if you have truly addressed the problem that they're trying to solve. You also have to address in your marketing messaging what you say to reassure them about the risks they may take if you're a substitute for a process or product that they're currently using. Do you use a spokesperson or a lead adopter to reassure them? Do you use trial evidence? Do you use guarantees? Do you use lifetime value analyses? Or do you use endorsements? Misspelled, my apologies. So there's lots of work to be done in the background about understanding your customer and what you need to say to them. You also need to know who is your buyer. If you're talking about B2B marketing and industrial marketing, you have a complex buying process. The roles in that buying process are the user, the buyer, the specifier, the economic buyer, and the gatekeepers. You need to have appropriate marketing and messaging for each of these. So if you're going to do digital advertising, most of us think about we have to advertise to the user. But what about the buyer? What about the specifier? What about the gatekeepers? How are we going to get our message to them? Are there actually separate campaigns in my digital marketing strategy with different messages, or are there multiple messages in a given digital ad that addresses these multiple roles in the buying process? I'm going fast, but I got to get to the digital marketing part. So you've got the path to your organization is your path to a committed customer advocate. Yes, question?
So who are the buyer and who is not the buyer?
The buyer in most companies is somebody who actually has the title of buyer. So they're responsible for buying generally expensed items, and they're often looking for ease of purchasing, lowest cost, return policies, guarantees, and they're surveying the market. They've got a specific role in the buying department. The economic buyer is often the person in finance who manages the capital or expense budget overall for the organization that determines whether or not the budget is big enough to accommodate changes or new solutions.
So how do I know who they are in their organization?
So you're talking specifically in company X, who is the buyer for this product? You have to call up and ask for the purchasing department and ask who's the buyer for reagents. Who is the buyer for spare parts? Who is the buyer for whatever it might be? But yeah, you can call up companies and ask. Buyers, their role is to protect often the users, especially the engineers, from having to work with too many different vendors. The buyers will vet the vendors first, and then if it's a match, they'll make arrangements for meetings with the users. Or you can work through the users, have them really, really want your product, have to go to the buyer to invite you to a buyer vendor evaluation meeting. So there's 2 ways it can happen depending on what kind of product you are, where you are in the commodity, expense versus capital part of the buying process. So your path to a committed customer advocate. Always keep in mind, you market and advertise to generate awareness. There is company.com, there is Solution X from company.com. That's the first level. Do you even exist? How would anybody know that you exist in the world? But then you have to make sure you take them to the next level. They have to be interested. Yeah, I'm going to spend some of my precious time to check out this company, read their stuff, review something they've got. Do they solve my problem? Then intent. Okay, I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to give them my contact information or an email or make some kind of arrangement to check this out even further. Then they actually have to get to trying it. So do you have a way for them to try your product or experience it without having to make a commitment yet, especially if you're a high dollar value? Then adoption. Okay, they've actually made a purchase. That's great. Then are you retaining them? Are they committed to you? Are there barriers to switching? And will they become an advocate? And so as I think about digital marketing and digital advertising, I'm always conscious of where within this buying process I am targeting the user, the economic buyer, the gatekeepers, and what the appropriate message is. Interview your customers, understand their pain points, what differentiates vendors and solutions, where they go for information, what conferences they go to, who are the thought leaders. And for digital marketing, it's very easy for us to feel like we understand our customers because we interpret what they say and we put it into our own language. But when you're interviewing customers thinking about doing advertising and marketing, you actually have to be an anthropologist. Your goal as part of that interview is to learn their language. And it becomes critically important in today's digital marketing world because so much of it is triggered by keyword phrases. And if you don't know the keyword phrases that your customers are using to describe your product, category, or solution, you won't be successful in casting your net in the right places in the digital world to bring them in to be aware, interest, intentional, or adopt your product. So as you do these interviews, be sure to note language and keep special notes on language. A lot of this is covered in what they're training you here at CoMotion about doing your lean canvas work. You've got huge numbers of resources throughout CoMotion on the lean canvas. But make sure you get to the point where you have a very clear value proposition. If you don't have a clear value proposition that you can summarize in 90 characters, you will not be successful at digital advertising because that's how long the title is on 2 lines of a Google AdWords ad. 90 characters, short form. You got to be very clear and very intentional, which is why you have to do all this work ahead of time. You also need to know their discovery process. Research online, do they go to conference presentations, peer recommendations, journals, white papers, direct mail, email, professional association. Get into the mind of your customers. And this is where it's really good to have 1 or 2 customers or potential customers who become your beta customers, who you really shadow. And you ask them very deliberately, how do they go about looking in this? And they become an ally for you in helping figuring out how to target their peers. Digital ads are only a part of the mix, so understanding this context and the role of especially online search in their process will help you make smart budgeting decisions, because digital marketing is only a piece of your overall budget. So I'm going to quickly touch on a type of ad that I'm not going to go into today, because again, we don't have enough time. If this is the place people want to go to, let Caroline know and I'll come back and we'll do something on display ads. So this is an online magazine on spinal intervention and medical surgeries. But what's interesting about it is on the right-hand side of the home page, it has a little sign that says advertisement, and it says ad choices, and it's got this funny little arrow. When you see that, advertisement, ad choices, that is a Google-delivered display ad. So you can actually advertise on these technical websites with Google advertising. And you do it with actually pictures and words. It's a whole separate strategy. I'm not going to go into it today, but it can be very cost effective if you do it right. I always recommend to most people, you don't want to DIY this, hire somebody. If you see that on your technical journals or on the web pages where your customers go, that little ad choices, hire a Google certified AdWords professional to help you develop a display campaign. It's really complicated. I've been working at it for 15 years and I still don't feel like I'm good at it because I only do it about 5% of my time. And it really takes a lot more than that to do it well. So I'm not going deep into that. The other digital advertising that is really, really helpful is the direct online ads. So almost every technical journal or technical news site has advertising available. They've got these banner ads at the top, they've got these square ads at the right. They are more than happy to sell you advertising space. If you go to the bottom of their websites, almost any of these online journals or online blogs have a click that advertise. You will have an advertising rep that you can call. They are so used to working with non-marketing technical people, they will walk you through their process. They will actually develop the ad copy and the pictures for you based on what you send them. They will put together packages. It tends to be a minimum of about $450 for a quarter-page ad kind of thing in most of the technical journals, up to $3,000 for big spreads, and then you want to do it at least 3 times. They'll propose to you what works within their journals, but great resources, and they do it for you basically for free to get the advertising dollars. So well worth checking into that if you have specific trade pubs for your particular market. Industrial products and services. The relevant industry associations often have the ability for you to do classified ads. Very cheap, very effective, very targeted, if there's an industry association for you. There are also industrial directories that are very low cost to get entry-level ads in and are very targeted. Some of you may have known about the Thomas Blue Book, which used to be on every industrial buyer's desk until a decade ago. It's now become ThomasNet Online, and industrial buyers still use it for a lot of searches. IHS Engineering 360 is a great platform where engineers look for a lot of solutions. Manufacturing.com and the IQS directory are all places where you can get essentially a startup low-cost listing for $150 and then upgrade to more and more and buy different ads depending on what matches you. So, the meat of our conversation today, Google AdWords, which is now called Google Ads because they're de-emphasizing the words. So Google Ads is how do I get on the relevant search results? So this is what the current look of a Google ad looks like. And they generally have 2 or 3 ads at the top of the page and sometimes 1 or 2 ads at the bottom of the page. It is based upon the key phrase that I put in the search bar plus my individual search history. So they have kept a profile on me for however long, 2 months, 3 months, for me 10 years, about what I searched for, where I searched. They also know how I've spent the last hour and a half. Have I been in technical journals or have I been on vendor websites? So they're also taking contextual clues based on my browsing history to come up with tailored results specifically for me. So if we look at the Google search world, personalized search is truly now personalized search for each individual browser, which is tied to that computer / the person who runs that computer's behavior. So these results are different for every single person, but you will still see ads. And so they have 2 vendors, Spinal Implant Insights, which is actually data that I need. This is market research information. Do you think they've got me pegged? I do market sizing for a lot of medical customers. So rather than serving me an ad that's actually about the spinal implant, the device I can buy, they gave me information about the market research market for spinal implants. They know me too well. And then Fujifilm computed radiography. Fujifilm is clearly trying to build awareness because this is not specifically related to my spinal implant query. But if I am a medical person thinking about spinal implants, I might be interested in their digital X-ray innovation. But it's very broadly targeted. This is a great way to spend lots of money with absolutely no results. So you have to be in a very different budget range than I think most of you are to be that far across. And I specifically picked this page to show you how you can get the targeting completely wrong. So, to be successful at Google AdWords, you need to set your ad goals. You need to know what you want out of that ad. Is it to increase sales to X? Is it to broaden awareness? Is it to get engagement? Is it to get attendance in an event? I've seen great use of Google Ad that you're going to be at XYZ trade show. Come to my booth. If you target it right, it actually can be really, really effective. Download a white paper, send in an inquiry. You need to know exactly what you want out of that ad before you even start the process. Each of these is a conversion. A conversion can be a sale, a lead on a form, a call, an email, a free trial, a white paper. It's some kind of an action. Google is more and more and more oriented towards conversion-based marketing. So they want you to design it for a conversion. Once you have that in mind, this is the universe of Google Ads. You've got your customer understanding. We covered that, right? We know what our customer need is, and we're thinking about their keywords. Then we have a campaign strategy where we're writing ad copy, setting bids, because Google is an auction. How many of you knew Google Ads is an auction? It's an auction. You're bidding against other vendors for those ads. You then have mechanics, and then you have your conversion page. Google's watching all of this, and they're assigning you a quality score. If that quality score goes down, they charge you geometrically more per click, because what they believe at that is that you are not serving their search customer. And their goal is to get the best possible match to the search customer's intent based on their query to the best advertiser. And so if you have low relevance, they're going to charge you more because you're not ideal for their customer, which is the searcher. It's not an even playing field. And we'll get more into this. But it's a cycle, and it goes round and round thinking about this relevance and quality score. So you start with the knowledge of the customer and how someone would search for what you're offering. What words are they going to use? What keyword phrases? They're still very, very relevant in digital advertising. And whether I do a query for spinal implants or information about spinal surgery, I get two very different search results. I've got two different intents. I've got different breadth and interest. And so what you want to do is do a lot of keyword research to start. After you've interviewed your customers, you've taken note of their language, you're now going to go into Google and you're going to do Google searches. And what you're going to look at is Google search suggestions. You know at the bottom of the page after you do a search, it has at the bottom related searches? It's telling you what it thinks is related to what you've done, and if there's a better term down there, you write it down. And you're going to start gathering up all kinds of related search words, and then you're going to organize them into sets and subsets that are closer together or further apart. Because it's all about these related phrases. You also have Google Insights, which is just Google Insights, and they'll tell you what search terms are trending. You know, Kim Kardashian's always at the top of, Google Search Insights. But you can put in your terms and it'll tell you the volumes of searches for related terms. For tiny little things like one of our people here is, in a very niche chemical market, you're not going to show up on the Google search terms. They're going to give you no information. You're going to have to know it really well from your own understanding. There's also a free tool out there called Keyword Spy. They're a sell-up. They want to sell you their premium service, but they give you lots of times to play with it before you have to buy in. And then AdWords has a keywords tool. So if you work with anybody who has an AdWords account, there's a little tool that we can use to do some keyword. You got to think like your customer, and then you want to exclude related but negative keywords. And that's getting too deep in. But this is what you're doing, is you're thinking about then the whole world of search and how somebody is searching within my field, within these solutions, and then specifically where I am. You haven't done anything yet in digital advertising. Have you noticed? You haven't done anything. You're still doing your background research. Now you're going to your website. Because if you don't optimize your website before you do digital advertising, you are never going to get anywhere. Your website needs to be more than just a home page. It needs to have conversion pages. It needs to have pages that are not only about your product, which you, I'm sure, all have, but it's about the customer-focused solution with a call to action that is written around the keywords that you have chosen, or the keyword group that is most relevant to what you have to offer. It should meet a specific customer need, answer a question, offer a solution, and you want to get the customer to ask, what do I do next? So there's got to be a button or a form on that page that the customer takes an action, because that's a conversion. So now you've got a conversion page on your website that's all around this insight you've got into who your customer is and the keywords. It matters a lot on this, because if you have not done some search engine optimization on both your website and that conversion page, Google is going to say, it's not relevant. I don't understand the connection between Fujifilm and spinal implants. And they're going to charge you a lot more for every single click, 10 times more if you've got a quality score of 2 versus a quality score of 8. Literally 10 times more. So it's worth spending some time in making sure that you have done SEO work. I can come back and do a talk on SEO if people want. But quality score is equal to your cost. So working on your website before you spend on digital advertising is money very well spent. Then you have to write your ad copy. We haven't even done anything yet. We haven't run an ad, but what are we going to say? So in your ad, you have whatever your conversion page is. So this is the URL, plus this is a conversion page about bulk ink. So this is actually for industrial printing. This is an industrial printing client. He's got a bulk ink solution. And then the headline 1 is, what is his solution? It's an HP bulk ink supply for carton codes. Save with TIJ, thermal inkjet, which is the terminology that people use in the interviews, is actually TIJ, not thermal inkjet. Bulk inks. So now I've used 29 characters and 29 characters. So I'm up to 58 out of my 60 characters. And now I have 30 more characters to go. What could I write here that would differentiate me from my competitors? What is my value proposition in 30 characters? Is it save money? Is it higher throughput? Is it print on different surfaces? What is it that I'm really offering that makes this work? And I want to put that here. And then I have descriptions where I've got both room for differentiators and reassurances. So industrial inks puts me in a category and also gives some relevancy for Google. 100% compatible. Okay, there's my reassurance. Compatibility is the #1 issue for people buying industrial inks. Is it compatible with their system? And save 50% off OEM. Oh, and it's also green if you have a green buyer. So we're trying to, in 73 characters, hit all the key reassurances in our first line of our description, and now I have a second line of description that I can write as well. So Google has expanded. Google reserves the right to serve any 2 of these 3 headlines, so they have to be standalone, and they may serve 1 or 2 of the descriptions. And this is then what the ad looks like. So now I can start writing my ads. You never write 1 ad, you always write 3 ads. And you test them against each other. Google is set up for A/B testing. The whole thing is all about A/B testing, and they are going to do, based on their algorithms, the best job at matching which ads work, and they're going to give you that feedback and tell you which ones get better attention and better clicks. Ad copy tips. Use your differentiator, but do it from the customer point of view. What's in it for them? What's in it for me from the customer point of view? Put your keywords in the title. That increases Google's relevance. Use your business name in your copy, especially if you're a new business. You can filter out inappropriate clickers. So this is one where if you've got don't take Medicare. This is a great one where you say, we don't take Medicare. You can filter out people who are Medicare looking for a solution. So you can filter out people as well. You can add reassurances, you can discuss your value, give a time limit and scarcity. So if you've got a free trial offer till September 1st, or if it's post-show, 30 days post-Comic-Con, you can get a costume for whatever it might be, and then give them a reason to click. So your ad is all about filtering and funneling them to the right conversion page. So your website may end up with 4 conversion pages if you've got 4 different products, or if you're addressing the user, the buyer, the economic buyer, and the gatekeeper. There's all kinds of possibilities for your conversion pages. Don't think about it as one conversion page, but think it about as a conversion page for each intersection of a solution for a customer. Example ad copy. So here's one, minimally invasive laminectomy. You could save thousands. More precise, faster recovery, one small incision. What's in it for me? Okay, if I had to have back surgery, this looks pretty good, but they don't accept Medicare. Oh, darn, I'm not going to click on that ad. I'm a Medicare patient. So you can see how it's filtering and funneling using their understanding of the customer and the keywords. And they've got laminectomy was in my search, and laminectomy's in their title. And it's in their copy. So it's signaling to Google that this is relevant, and the page that this lands on should all be about laminectomies, that I'm saving thousands, that are precise with a fast recovery. So it's all got to tie back together. So now we've gotten our customer need, our keywords, our ad copy. We have to think about our bid strategy. How are we going to bid this, and how are we going to measure it? How am I doing on time? We're getting close. Okay. Your budget and your bid strategy. Your campaign budget is going to be based on your goals combined with your assumptions of the value of a customer and yields from conversion modeling. That's a big whole set of things. But basically, if a customer is worth $500 to you and $250 of that is profit, you're going to be willing to spend a lot more on a lead for that customer than if a customer is worth $25 and there's only $5 profit in it. So you have to actually do financial modeling about what it might look like. And so we're going to go, well, let's go here. This is one about celiac disease. So let's say there are 100,000 searchers on the topic of gluten-free, but there are only 10,000 searchers on celiac information and systems. So I'm going to spend enough to do 3,000 impressions for a video about celiac information and systems. I'm going to pay only for those that click. I'm going to have a 2% click-through rate, which is typical in Google Ads. 10% is outstanding, 2% is typical. But in very niche scientific and business-to-business, I have seen 20 to 28% click-through rates if you really hit your targeting perfectly. Click through the video site. So now I've had 60 prospects. So 2% times my 3,000 actually clicked. It was $1.25 a click, so I just spent $75 to get 60 prospects, but only 10% of those actually buy my video. So I don't have a high conversion rate. So they come to my conversion page, but only 10% of them buy. I now have 6 customers. I just spent $12.50 per customer. Can I afford that? Yeah. But if only 5% bought, then I'm spending $25 per customer. I can't afford it. So what I have to be willing to do is set aside this budget, test it, check my conversion rate. If it's lower than 10%, I don't do this ad strategy. If it's above 10%, I figure out how to expand it. So you're thinking through a model of how people are going to approach, and I have a little bit more on that in a second. Google does have automated bidding, but it requires a track record and conversion tracking. And usually when you're just starting out, you're all startups, you don't have this, so you can't go to an automated bid strategy yet. But their automated bid strategies are what we call vanity bidding, which are maximizing clicks, target locations, or target outrank. That's what that Fujifilm was. It's basically a brand strategy, awareness strategy. It's vanity bidding, but it's not really targeted at a conversion. versus smart bidding, which is a target CPA, which is cost per acquired customer, cost per target return on ad spend, and enhanced cost per click, or maximize conversions. All of these require at least 100 conversions to automate. For most of the small businesses I work with, they can go 6 months before they get 100 conversions. So they have to be willing to experiment and set a budget without automated. So this is what cost per lead target modeling looks like. You set up a little model where you've got your inputs on what your impressions might be, your click-through rate, your conversion rate, qualified leads, and then it calculates through how many clicks, how many leads, how many qualified leads, number of sales, revenue per sale, your cost of goods sold, operating expenses, advertising cost, and then what's your profit per click. And you set this up, and then you play with different assumptions, and you figure out where you can operate within. You guys are all at the university. You can handle modeling. That's all we're doing is setting up what are the operating conditions that we can work within based on our profitability for our product. Okay. Going back to budget and bidding. How much can you afford to spend then? You have to actually determine it empirically. It's the only way you can do it is by actually setting aside a budget, working it through, and seeing how well it works. So I suggest that when you start out, you have 3 months budget of twice your target spend. So if my target spend ongoing is $250 a month in digital advertising budget, I need at least 3 months of $500 a month to be able to do the learning I need to do to figure out what works and what doesn't. So you have to have this bubble up front before you go into your baseline spend so you can basically make mistakes, learn empirically, because that's the only way you can do it. Quality score is set your bid. So if the celiac disease, the $1.25 per click, was because Google gave her a 5 out of 10 on quality score. And Google actually shows you in Google AdWords interface what your quality score is once it has enough data. But again, it gets it empirically. A 5 out of 10, if she were an 8 out of 10, she might have been charged only 35 cents a click. And if she were a 2 out of 10, she might have been charged $3, $8 a click. So it's truly a geometric scale for how you bid based on quality score. The quality score is based, number one, on relevance. Does the search query match the ad copy, match the conversion or landing page for the ad? And they do that based on keyword and the intent of the search. And so you want to make sure. So I have a lot of clients ask me, I've got competitor XYZ. Why can't I just use competitor XYZ as one of my search terms and bid on that? You can, but Google will give you a quality score of 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10 because you are not competitor XYZ. And they will charge you $8 a click, and most customers don't want that bait and switch. They see it and don't want it. But if you have a page that is your conversion page that's comparing you to competitor XYZ, and the whole page is us versus competitor XYZ, and you've got it all laid out, that might have a quality score of a 6 or a 7, and you might be able to afford it, and it might be a very compelling argument for both the customer and for Google that this is a valuable and relevant page within this search process if they're looking for a comparison. They also look at your historical click-through rate, and they look at the quality of your landing page. So if your landing page is a mess from a search engine optimization standpoint, they will ding you. If you haven't indexed your site appropriately, they don't like poor quality sites. Yes?
Do you have a chance to negotiate with them or talk with them?
Never.
About their scores?
Never. They do it in a black box and you get to respond. As a Google certified AdWords professional, I am fortunate that I have a liaison person and I can send queries to him, and they sometimes get back to me with reasonable answers, but probably 7 times out of 10, there's not a reasonable answer. They just say, it's our policy, or this is how it works, or all we see is that, it's not relevant, but they won't give you tips on how to make it more relevant. And this is where, if your budget is going to be more than $500 a month or $1,000 a year on Google Ads, it probably would behoove you to hire a certified professional or somebody who does this professionally, because it's getting more and more complex. But it is interesting to play with, and it's a very good disciplined thinking process about what it is your customer wants, who is buying, what is the short form messaging, and then what on a conversion page will get them to bite, whatever the bite is for you. Your campaign structure. Google is structured in that a campaign in Google sets a geography and a budget. So if I have a specific thing I'm trying to sell, let's say it's reagent X, and I have a budget of $500 a month for reagent X, I can set that as a campaign. But let's say I'm trying to sell it in North America and Europe, and I have only $300 in North America and $200 in Europe. I actually want to set that up as 2 different campaigns, because then I can control the budget separately. You can't control the budget below the campaign level. So if you need to identify and control a separate budget, you do it at the campaign level. An ad group is where you collect a single conversion page and a group of keyword phrases that lead to that conversion page. And then you have your keywords. So, yeah, if you want to control geography, separate campaign. Control dollars, separate campaign. If you test it, put it in a campaign. Product lines are separate campaigns. And a purchase versus a white paper download would be a separate campaign, because I want to measure them separately. If you want to measure it separately and know how it works. So let's say I have a white paper that is, the information about how my product works in a specific clinical setting. And I want people to download that, and I'm going to capture their name from it so that I can then follow up with them with a phone call or an email drip campaign. Or they actually purchase online. Those need to be 2 separate conversion pages and 2 separate campaigns. So I can track them separately. Keywords. Google is really funny about keyword phrases. It has suggestions for you all the time about what things go together and what doesn't. Listen to Google, because they will ding you if I had the spinal laminectomy and a disc surgery. Those are synonyms to us. We know that a spinal laminectomy is the technical term for a disc surgery. Google, though, may think that those are 2 separate things, and they would want you to have an ad group and a conversion page for disc surgery that would be different than your ad group and your landing page for spinal laminectomy. You're going to be speaking at a completely different level with a different set of keywords. They believe out there's a different search user and user intent. A spinal laminectomy is most likely going to be medical professionals or very educated people who act like medical professionals, and the disc surgery is going to be your average Joe consumer. And so they won't see those as synonyms. They're getting better at synonyms, but they're still very imperfect. They're learning about language is very literal still, and they're still learning. They're getting much better, though. So Google Ads is an auction, so you need to test, measure, and adjust. So this is the empirical learning. Going back to, this is all empirical. Bids are keyword phrases. Cost is based on your quality score. Variations on your ad copy. You're going to test, measure, adapt, test, measure, adapt. When you've had enough conversions, you can then look at Google's automation. Start small and then scale. Biggest mistake I see people do is they want to go national across everything in their first 3 weeks of Google Ads. Pick a single geography or location to limit your budget and a set of key phrases to start. I'm working right now with a small business development center in California, and I tell them, why don't you just do your practice empirical stuff in the state of California? It's a big enough market, but it's going to be 1/10 of a national budget. You'll do all your learning and then expand it to national once you've figured out what works. It's a great way to start small, limit the exposure as you're learning, and then expand your budget. Or pick a specific ad group. Start there, figure out how it works, and then expand. Don't go international unless you're in a very tight niche or you have a multi-language site or can do multilingual campaigns. Google's getting harder and harder and harder to break into with an English language site if you, for example, want to attract a France or German customer. Even though in the technical fields we're transnational and English is the lingua franca, Google doesn't recognize that, and they will not serve English-only ads to French websites for the most part, unless it's a very narrow niche. It's very expensive and it's very problematic. I'm having big problems right now with a nonprofit I work with that does playground designs for it's basically for local materials. So how to take old tires and bamboo sticks or whatever may be local and build a playground. And we have been advertising for 8 years in 18 countries around the world. And now Google is sending us all kinds of messages that this is not a local language or a locally specific site, and we need to have translations on our website to advertise here. And it's been a huge shift for us. Yeah?
Is that like a Google decision, or is that Google responding to like language protection?
It's a Google decision. It's based on what they think is relevant and what the feedback they're getting from Google search users in general. And it may be true for some categories, but for others, it might not be. Follow up on conversions. So this is the biggest place I've seen a number of my startups drop is they set up this Google ad campaign. They have this nifty form that people fill out if they're interested in. They get them the free sample or the white paper, and then they don't have a system to follow up after that. And it's like, you just spent $25 getting a live lead who's interested in your product. You might have a universe of only 1,000 people, and you didn't follow up. Are you kidding me? So you've got to have a process for following up on those conversions if it's not a direct sale. So if it's forms name capture, are you going to do a drip campaign? Are you going to have a sales call scheduler? Are you going to have standard response emails? Do you have a CRM system, which is a customer relationship management system, or a spreadsheet where you track? Whatever it might be, you need to have a follow-up process. Design this process before you start advertising. Know what you're going to do. Figure out how you're going to do it. Use analytics on your website to track your conversions as well, because that's going to give you the feedback and the empirical data that's going to help you, A, develop your website better, redesign it, and B, maximize your conversion pages, because it tells you how many people came to a conversion page and then either left the site directly, immediate exit, or went to another page to get more information. Well, if they're always going to another page to more information, what if you brought that information onto that page so you could get the conversion? So it gives you analytics. Google Analytics has great information. I could come do a whole nother 45 minutes on Google Analytics. So if you want that. So we're into questions. I'm 5 minutes over. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, questions? So somebody had asked about, are there tools to automate this? And the answer is no. If you're doing very large Google ad campaigns across multiple clients, there are subscriptions you can get to tools. I find most of them are too expensive for me, even with my small business and a dozen startup clients, to pay $500 a month plus a per keyword fee to use a platform. I find it's much easier to use. Google has a tool called AdWords Editor that you can download for free. It allows you to do a lot of this building offline and then upload it all at once into their interface. That's more than sufficient. And with that and a bunch of good spreadsheet work, it's less expensive. So no, I have not found a good tool that manages this automatically at the scale of a startup. And that's really what I'm speaking to. Yeah.
So thank you. I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose here. So I just want to feel for how big a resources would a small company dedicate to something like this? Do you have like a rule of thumb? Say, I don't know, say you're $1 million revenue company and 50% of your leads come through search engines. would you be dedicating like one marketer specifically for this for a certain amount of time, or would you?
Oh, that's a really good question. So as you budget this, what I find is some engineers find this fun, and so they can learn to do it and do it on a small scale as part of their job because they enjoy it. If nobody on your teams enjoys it, go find and hire somebody to do it. And there's all different sizes and rates. There are people who work on small campaigns. There are people who work on big campaigns. And there are people who do this virtually from companies overseas that can help you set it up at much lower rates than having somebody local. So there's a huge marketplace out there for people who will help you manage this. In terms of dedicated resource, what I think most startups underinvest in their marketing, and they should have a dedicated marketing person. And if that dedicated marketing person can and wants to do this, make that part of their job. But I wouldn't see that you'd need a full-time person at all working on your ads, because it has to fit within that broader mix that I showed you on about slide 5 of all the other things. I mean, you've also got conferences that you're working on, and you've got emails and all the other stuff. And so it's hard to be such a generalist, but it can be part of your mix. Okay, other questions?
You got one, Angel?
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering about what your thoughts are on the, I guess, spread of like search ads versus display ads. You touched briefly on like the ads that appear like on top of like trade pubs of, you know, and on the side and whatnot. I guess like budgeting towards that versus like the search display ads that you focused on heavily here.
Again, it's empirical. It really depends on, I would try it and see what works. The display ads that I have used in trade pubs over the past 10 years for my startup clients, probably 3 out of 12 campaigns have been successful, and 9 out of 12 were not successful, in that they did not result in sufficient conversions to reimburse for the cost based on that spreadsheet model that I showed you. And so it is, I think of it as tricky to get the right targeting with the right message. A lot of people on the trade pubs, when they're there, are browsing, but they're not in I'm ready to take action mode. And so it's then how much can you invest in awareness, and how valuable is that awareness? What we did for one client that worked really well was we had a trade show coming up. We were launching a significant new product, and it was the industry's major trade show. What we did is for the 2 months prior to that, we teased the product and told them where we were going to be and our booth at the trade show. And that worked really well. So we weren't looking for a conversion through the pub display ad, but we were trying to get people to our booth primed and ready to talk to us about our breakthrough technology. And that was a very productive strategy, but it was combined with a bigger marketing push. And it was also a client that was not a startup. They were the next phase. They were growing from a small to a medium business, and they were really depending on this product launch to get them to the next size. So they had the money to invest in it a little bit as well. So it was about a $10,000 campaign. So that campaign alone was a $10,000 campaign, not a $250 campaign. So it really depends on the scale of what your budget is. You're welcome.
Another burning question. Is Google really the only player? Or is there?
No, Bing is a good player in this. Bing operates similarly but slightly different from Google. Bing right now has about 10% of the search share, and they share their ad platform with Yahoo. So Bing and Yahoo plus sort of all the other search engines all work off of the Bing engine, and it generally costs about 80% of what it costs in Google on a per-click bid in Bing. Bing skews higher income, and it skews larger corporate because they come with the Bing search engine installed in their Microsoft computers that are deployed to the corporations. So Bing can be very effective. What's nice about Bing is once you develop an ad campaign in Google, they have tools where you can just suck that campaign straight into Bing. and then make minor edits to their platform as a place to start, so you don't have to build from scratch within Bing. So they recognize that, you know, Google's the 50-pound gorilla and they're just a little monkey. But they keep on trying. There's also very small engines like DuckDuckGo and a few others. I have never found it to be worth my time to spend on any of those engines, even for very large clients, just because 1 hour of my time, it would take 3 years for it to return at the rate they get clicks.
Thank you. I want to know, do you have some recommendations for the books or tools to help us to learn or start learning how to do all these things like SEO or something like this, learn by ourselves?
So there's a bunch of good places to learn about this if you want to become competent in Google. The first is Google itself. They have an online training program that takes you through 10 videos, and you can actually anyone can become a Google Certified AdWords professional by going through all of their videos and then demonstrating competence through skill demonstrations online. There's also a great blog/website called Search Engine Land. Search Engine Land, and also Website Builder Magazine are both great resources. So.
Thank you for your talk. I wanted to know how the strategy or the process differs when you're doing Google AdWords search on desktop versus for a mobile user, or is it like the same process? Or
It's the same process. It's actually all within the same platform, and Google will give you your results on mobile versus desktop. All of their ad formats now are designed for both, except for if you're operating a local retail business. So if you have a brick and mortar in Ravenna, it's going to operate very different on mobile than it will on desktop. But for most of the national and general scientific businesses, they operate exactly the same. And what I find is that conversions are significantly lower on mobile. So what I do is I do what's called a mobile bid adjust. And I usually decrease my mobile bids between 30% or 50% of my desktop bids. But I keep showing mobile ads because what we're seeing is a lot of cross-browser work where people will search, you know, when they're on the bus on the way to work, they get home, and then they go follow up to the conversion because it's too hard to try and, you know, type in the web form or whatever it is on their phone. And so we keep advertising on mobile. We do it at half the bid.
Time for a couple more.
So, Catherine, I'm being prompted to re-ask the same question that I asked right before your talk when you said, what did we want to cover? So to try and put it as simply as possible, and I may not have this right, but I'm probably close. Our universe worldwide might be 50. Our universe in the United States, probably 25. I just having the feeling that this isn't the right way to spend our money. How is this targeted?
Unless you think it's fun. What I found is that having the hyper niche campaigns built and running in the background, once it's set up, requires very little monitoring because there's no competition. So the auction isn't changing a lot. Your keywords and phrases aren't changing a lot. I mean, if somebody's looking for, you know, salicylic reagent, and you've got your keyword is salicylic reagents or reagents for XYZ process, and your ad comes up, and you've just got those 4 keywords and 2 ads, you just let it run. It may cost you $10 a month. The cost is in setting it up, and it doesn't. For something that narrow, it's actually very easy to set up as long as you've got the conversion page.
So I see your point and understand it. And on our website, we have a place, a page where people can come to us and ask questions or inquire. And I told the professor and the others that I work with, I said, I will be shocked if we get anything in a year And so far, I guess, I mean, I hate to say this, but sadly, I've been right. And in fact, what I've been getting is just junk.
Yep.
And so, you know, I mean, we have to have it just for visibility and so our customers can see that we're legitimate. But I guess, yeah, in a narrow world, it's hard to.
So that industrial ink customer felt the same way. And he was talking at one point, we were on a conference call, and he mentioned a part number called an IQ 900, which is a niche solvent ink that's used only in this one particular product. And I said, what's an IQ 900? And he goes, oh, that's just another solvent ink that does this. And I said, should we set up a little ad group around that? And he goes, oh, if you want to. So I just went in and I created an ad group that literally has one keyword, IQ 900. And has the ad copy, you know, solvent inks for your IQ 900, you know, low-cost replacements, quick ship, you know, whatever it might be, and a landing page that was, I already had the IQ 900, turns out, on the website. I just didn't know it. I changed the title to its real title and then its part number title. So now it had both. And he's gotten 3 orders from that. And it's like, awesome. But it's literally a one keyword ad group.
Our last question is going to come from Spokane. It's, any ideas on the budget for hiring a Google Ads consultant to help with the ads? Do you recommend a percentage of the total marketing budget?
That's what a lot of the big agencies want to do, is they want a percent of the total marketing budget. What I would suggest is find a freelance or independent professional who's used to working with startups and smaller companies and is willing to charge per hour essentially for the setup, and then an ongoing monthly fee for what I call the grooming and maintenance and reporting. And so the setup, depending on how well you've done your understanding your customer, your keyword information, and your conversion page, can be as little as $750 to set up a limited campaign, and then ongoing grooming, conversion, and maintenance as little as $350 a month. But really, that's what it takes in terms of hours to do it. Most people will want to charge more because you're too small, and so it's finding the right vendor that's a piece of what you're going to be looking for.
Great, thank you. That's it for for this session. Hope to see a bunch of you back in a few weeks. Thanks, Catherine.
Great.